Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cinemaholic Productions. My name is Spencer Henderson, and I am a cinemaholic.
I am Ryan, and I am a cinemaholic as well. Today we are doing a review for It Comes at Night, which is the new A24 Productions movie. You know, it's an indie movie that they picked up, starring Joel Edgerton and featuring Christopher Abbott, Cameron Ajogo or something, and Riley Coe. I've never known how to say her last name. It's a very small indie horror film. But to just start off, Spencer, you went into this having seen none of the advertisements, just the poster and one shot. What did you think about this movie?
Um, I think overall I like this movie quite a bit. I wouldn't really call this a horror movie. I think there are definitely horror elements, and there are some shots that are really creepy in this movie. I would call this more a contained thriller. Because this is more a movie about mistrust, like not being able to trust people because of a extremely horrendous and horrible situation that these people find themselves in. And I think that this movie is extremely disturbing on a psychological level because when you come down to think of it without getting too spoilery, this world that they're living in doesn't really seem like it's even worth living in. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's to the point where things are so messed up, and like where the opening scene of this movie is just horrendously disturbing, sad, bleak. And when it happened, I was just like, I could not believe what I just saw. I was like already scarred for life by this movie. And somehow it manages to get even more bleak and disturbing. So I think as far as like the mood goes, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed certain elements about the film that we'll get more to into spoilers. But I feel like almost there were a couple issues I had with the movie as far as like I don't know how much into the plot I can get, but there's a virus basically that wipe people out. I don't feel like we know enough about this virus, what this virus does, like when it started, what it really does to people. We never really learn that. We kind of just have assumptions, and maybe the characters don't know that as well. So it could be maybe not even a flaw about the movie. And I want to rewatch it again just for like elements because of that. But I think overall I like this movie quite a bit. It's not as good as something like The Witch, which is also an A24 production, but I think that this is a solid like thriller with some really great performances in it. Ryan, what did you think?
I echo basically everything you said. I think a few times they do mention that they don't know anything really about the virus, just that people started getting sick and so everybody bailed. So that didn't bother me too much. I think the biggest standout for me was just how well made the movie was. I don't know if I was expecting it to come out as well as it did, in aspects of the look and the cinematography. It was very brilliant, very beautiful, as well as the pacing. The pacing really worked for me on this. It's a slow burn, and I compared it to The Witch in that aspect that it's very suspenseful through the whole thing, but not a lot happens. And I really enjoyed that. At the end of the film, I stood back, and this is one of the ones where I thought, I think a majority of the people are going to like this, but the ending is either going to turn people on or turn them off. There's not going to be much middle ground on this, I don't think. Either it's really going to do it for you, or you're going to be like, that's what I just, what? So I'm interested to see how a lot of horror fans take this, because like you said, it's not necessarily a horror, though that's what it's classified as on IMDb. I would I would say it's a self-contained thriller, and that's like one of my favorite genres. Is thrillers are they get me going. So that's kind of all I really want to go into detail without going spoilers. So let's go ahead and score it. Do you want to score it and then get into spoilers?
Yep, I'm down to score it. I think right now, like I said, I kind of want to rewatch this movie, but right now I'm sitting at about a 7.25 out of 10. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think that, like you said, it's very well done, but there was just a couple things about it that I don't know, maybe yeah, we'll have to get to into spoilers. I just don't feel like it and the thing about it is without it's really hard to talk about this without like spoiling the movie, but there are certain elements of it that I think it intentionally does because it wants to put you in the shoes of the main character that it just never really answered for me. So, like maybe you know what I'm talking about, but yeah, 7.25. I feel like. What about you?
I'm gonna go a little bit higher than you. I'm going back and forth. Last night, I was gonna give it an 8, but I think this morning I'm gonna give it an 8.25. I really did enjoy this movie, and this is one that I've seen it like once and a half now, and bits and pieces of it. And like I was saying a little bit with the cinematography, one thing that we can get more in depth on now going into spoilers is the use of the aspect ratio that I texted you about. That really worked for me. And it wasn't until the end that I was like, yes, it really is happening. Because I kind of had the thought throughout the movie, and they shift from using different aspect ratios and different lenses to create this kind of nauseous and anxious feeling inside you, because the whole movie is about paranoia and the paranoia within these characters. So that really did work for me, especially at the end when it is at like a 3.0 aspect ratio. And I was like, there is something different. Like there's no way. So that really worked for me. Did you have any thoughts on that? You had a conversation with your friend about it.
Yeah, I feel like there was part of me that kind of thinks, was there any dream sequences in this movie? Like, was this all just happening? And that's why I want to go back and rewatch it, is because we know that what's his name, Travis, like sleepwalks, right? So there's like kind of like the big question at the end of the movie is the little kid sick? Like, is he even sick? And they never even answer that situation. Right. So you're like, did he get sick, or is it just paranoia in Joel Edgerton's Paul's like head, where it's just like you're sitting there like, man, I might have reacted similarly to this guy, but I'm uncertain. And that's the thing, is like the change of the aspect ratio, it gave it a more dreamlike feel, and the lenses as well. The movie, to me, had a completely different look once we were in those sequences. And at the end of the movie, I feel like that really helped make it a lot more like claustrophobic, almost in a certain sense, because it definitely had a different feel to it. But Ryan sent me an interview with the director, and the director said what he was going for at the end of the movie was that reality had like literally become a nightmare at that point. And that's like exactly what I said to my friend Corey, who I saw this with last night. So, I mean, I thought that it was brilliant, like a brilliant use of, or a brilliant way to direct kind of like the scares in this movie. Yeah. So I really dug that about it.
Going a little bit further into the dream sequences, like you were talking about, after thinking about it on the drive home, I was left with the impression that there weren't necessarily dream sequences, that everything that we were supposed to think was a dream was actually just present tense, and everything else was just a flashback of him reliving this experience, because it would fade to black and then it would go into him being sick, which is how the movie ends. Which kind of, for me, it was like, okay, everything has been a setup for him as he's dying, reliving this experience of how he got sick.
That is a extremely interesting idea, because I didn't even think of it like that at all. But the only one part where it's like, is it a dream, is the girl's throwing up in his mouth, like throwing up blood.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the the thing that I have with the theory is because there's that instance, and there's a few others that are just kind of left vague, which I'm sure that's what they were going for. But like, what happened with the dog? He went out and did he see the dog eating something and shoot it, or did he see it injured?
I think what
Or is that reality, or is that a dream?
I think the implication was that, yeah, so the dog runs off at that one part and they just let it go. Like, he's like, it's not worth it. We don't want anybody to get sick. So they go back. I feel like the dog, they perceived that the dog got sick, and so that's why they shot it. Which, the dog's name was Stanley. You could almost think that, because this movie had elements of The Shining in it, with like the way that they kind of like lay out this house. It's almost like maybe it's a Stanley Kubrick reference. That's kind of what I was thinking when I watched the movie. One thing I want to ask you is, do you think that Will was who he said he is? Because
I think so. I, at least walking out of it, I wanted to take everything at face value and then just have everything happen because everyone was so paranoid. They all were telling their own truth and everything was true, but they were all just construing that truth and not believing each other because of the paranoia.
Okay, so the reason why I ask is because there's that scene where he mentions his brother, then later he says he's an only child, goes back, oh, well, it's my brother-in-law, you know, and that very well could be the case, and that kind of like makes you be like, uh-oh. And then when I thought back, on the movie, there's the part where he's in the back of the truck and those two like people try to raid them. Yeah. And when Joel Edgerton shoots that guy, he gets really upset with him for a second about, it's like, were they in cahoots with like those people who he had just like shot? So there was kind of like an element of, and that's what I'm talking about. That's what's why I think this movie is somewhat brilliant, is because it makes you, it really puts you in the situation of not knowing what this sickness is, of knowing the only thing we know about it is that it's horrible and that it will literally wipe this entire family out if they don't keep themselves like away from it. Yeah. And so then we add in the element of this family. Who are they? We can't trust them. We don't know who these people are. And man, I really found myself like questioning, like, is this person somebody that these people can trust? And kind of at points like straight up judging that character, despite the fact that I feel like in that situation, I probably would want to be more like Travis, somebody who's like, we need to be empathetic. We need to like split our supplies with these people and help them. But who knows, man? That's the thing, is like, it kind of makes almost like an allegory out of like Paul's philosophy as opposed to his son, like Travis or Will's philosophy, where they're the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, and I agree. And that is part of the brilliance, because when you watch it again, it'll probably stand out a little bit more. Maybe you even recognized it now. But one thing on my second viewing, as I started through, there's a lot of just very like static and lingering shots on the son. There's a moment where Joel's character is giving this big old monologue, and they're trying to decide. The parents are trying to decide, do we invite them in or do we kill him? And the shot just keeps pushing forward on the son. And they do several shots throughout the whole thing where it lingers on him, and it makes you kind of think he's not who he says he is, and it makes him suspicious the whole movie. And then to the end, it's like, I mean, they kind of do that perfectly with every character, and you're like, okay, are they who they say they are? And then at the end, it kind of all wraps up. And that's why I felt like it could have been him reliving this experience, because there is an awful lot of emphasis put on this kid. And maybe that's just so that when it gets to the moment where they're asking, was he sleepwalking? Was the door open? It makes you question it a little bit more. Maybe that was the whole point, but it's a very intriguing movie that talking, which is
right. And honestly, this is making me want to go back and put my score up higher. That's the thing that stinks about this. Is last night was the same thing. Initially, when I walked out, I just had a ton of questions. And the more I talk about this movie, the more I like it. and maybe even on retroactive like views of this movie, I'm just gonna like it more and more. And that's the thing, is like, oh, it's one of those movies I just want to talk to people about. And like, but I almost think I want to watch it one more time just as well, just because it's like, it's one of those that, like you said, every single character, there's something just really deep going on under the surface with them. And this movie isn't even all that long.
Yeah.
Like, I was intrigued the entire time, on the edge of my seat, paying attention, trying to take in every little detail about this movie. And I just think that it doesn't seem like it had that big of a budget. It was very contained. There wasn't a lot of stuff that looked like, wow, that must have been really hard to pull off. So I don't know. See if they have the budget posted. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. But it just like it's an impressive movie. And I think if you're a fan of thrillers / horror, and you can take a little bit of bleak, because this movie is extremely bleak, then I would recommend checking this out and then coming back here and talking with us in the comments.
Definitely. I would agree. This is one that if you're into this kind of genre and subgenre, check this out and let us know what you think, and let's spitball some theories, because I think it was left just vague enough to inspire this kind of dialogue and talking to figure out what it could have meant. And just going off of that interview that I shared a little bit from you, the director himself, in answering all the questions, was kind of like, well, maybe it's this, or well, maybe it's this, which normally it's like, oh, the director doesn't even know what he's talking about. But I think
he wants it.
Works.
Yeah, I think he wants it to inspire discussion.
Yeah.
Like, that's honestly, that's what's so great about film, is that we can sit here and we can say, this is my idea of what went down. This is my idea of what went down. It's just kind of like, you know, using the story and the context of what's going on to figure out what happened from your own logic. And I think that that's so great. And that's part of what makes this movie pretty horrifying, is because you think about, who would I be in this situation? Like, what would I do if I was faced with this just incredibly bleak, horrendous situation? So, man, I'm liking this movie more, like more and more.
Man, so. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to go back and I'm going to finish my second watch and see if I can piece some more stuff together, and I'll be tweeting about it, see if I discover anything else. So follow me on Twitter at Rye_Gordon. Do you want to do the same?
Yeah, sure. You can follow me on Twitter at SpinnyHand. I will probably, have to go wind up making a trip back to the theater and giving this one a rewatch. But yeah, guys, I meant to post that Silicon Valley review. It's all edited. I just haven't clicked that upload button yet. So I'll have that up today, as well as this review when you're watching this. So check out both of those. And go check out It Comes at Night, guys. Like, go support A24. They're always doing something interesting. Dang it. Like, they just, even when it's not a complete home run, I'm always just like so fascinated by the projects that they take on. So, man, just bravo to A24. Me and Ryan will continue to be some of your guys' biggest fans.
Seriously. Don't go out and waste your money on The Mummy. Support independent film and A24. And stay tuned, because next week we are going to be talking about the Tupac biopic. All Eyes on Me. Maybe we'll go see Cars. I should probably watch the second one if we're going to be talking about the third one.
Don't do it. I'd just skip it.
Skip it. All right. Until next week. Bye.